What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at the newly released Transformers Earthrise Voyager class Snapdragon. Snapdragon is a part of the second wave of the Earthrise Voyagers and was supposed to be packaged with the Voyager class Quintesson Judge, a figure which I was really looking forward to. However, it does appear as if though the Quintesson Judge has been pushed back to be released as part of Wave 3, with a repack of Starscream now taking his place, which is so unfortunate. But nevertheless, we do get a new figure out of Wave 2, that being in the form of Snapdragon, and I've got to say that similarly to my thoughts in my Transformers Siege Voyager class Ape Face review, this is definitely not my favourite Earthrise figure. I'm not really a fan of the Horicons, and Snapdragon here, I am afraid to say, definitely has some of the flaws that I found with Ape Face. Now that's not to say that this figure is a complete write-off. He does have one exceptional mode which I will go into very shortly, but you can see here that we have him in his Dragon mode, and this to me really doesn't look great. Now there are some elements which are really faithful to the source material, but then there are just some other elements that I think Hasbro really dropped the ball on, especially this tail section. You can see here that it is clearly just a cockpit. It would have been nice if they could have found a way to have actually broken this up ever so slightly, perhaps if they'd added a joint here so that we could hinge this section back ever so slightly. And it does also appear as if though it is too long and it doesn't really look in proportion nor in scale with the rest of the figure's body. But taking a look at Snapdragon's head sculpt when in Dragon mode, I think that this looks quite cool. The lower jaw is recreated out of his headmaster, which is quite a cool concept, and you can see we do have some very clean pink paneling detailing there, and you've got the red eyes which I think have been sculpted quite nicely. The plastic on this figure is leaps and bounds better than that of Ape Face. Gone is the rather soapy like plastic that we got with Ape Face, and we now have this more greyish plastic which, despite its rather bland appearance, believe me, is definitely a lot better in hand than that of what we got with Ape Face. He does also have some really nice sculpted in detailing. You can see here where this black plastic is, there is some really nice sculpted in work there, and I think that the arms here look quite nice. Unfortunately they are hollow in the interior, but you can see that they have got some sculpted in detailing, so it's nice that Hasbro didn't just leave these sections bland. We do have a Decepticon insignia where I presume his torso would be, and then as we turn down to this section, this is just a huge chunk of the jet mode, and once again proportionally doesn't really look that great. He does come with two accessories, that being these two cannons here. They are completely the same, and I've got to say that these actually look quite nice as well, and I think that they are rather solid as well. There are no real hollow gaps. There's some hollow gappage here, but that to me adds to the detail and just gives some depth to the guns, so I think that the guns do look quite nice. If you take a look at it from the top, you can see here that these are the inner sections of the legs, and then you've got the actual legs here for the Dragon mode. I don't think that these have turned out too bad. You've got some detailings of claws, and then on the sides you've got the wings for the jet mode, so just giving you one last 360 look at Snapdragon in his Dragon form. Overall, not the best looking Dragon mode, but it does what it's supposed to do. Turning to articulation, as the headmaster actually transforms into the jaw, we do actually get quite a good range of motion. So there's a hinge joint here as well as a hinge joint here, so you can really and truly articulate the jaw to actually clamp and eat one of Snapdragon's victims, which is quite nice. But as you begin to move it, you definitely do dislodge the illusion that this is a jaw, and it does become to look slightly goofy, especially if you completely elongate that. It does look as if though Snapdragon has a really bad overbite and should check out the Cybertronian dentist, but if you just compress this how it's supposed to be, I don't think that this looks too bad. We get a hinge joint here for the top of the arms, as well as a ball joint here for the lower arm, allowing you to hinge this forwards as well as rotate this in and out. For the legs, due to robot mode, we do get them kicking backwards as well as forwards. They can also hinge out to the sides, and due to transformation you can also hinge the toes in order for a more compressed look. And we also do get a knee joint here as well if you wish to have this in a more compressed configuration. Nothing here for this section of the tail. Once again, it would have been great if they could have broken up the sculpt here and just added an extra hinge, or perhaps utilised these joints here so that we could actually sway this left to right. I think that would have definitely amplified the look of the Dragon mode. But finally we do just get the tip of the tail which can hinge forwards and backwards, which I guess is a nice piece of articulation and is something that they didn't have to do. And really and truly, if they didn't have broken this up, this really would have looked awful. So I am glad at least that we do have one hinge joint. So that is a look at Snapdragon in his Dragon mode. Let's come out for some size comparisons. So here for a comparison we have our first War for Cybertron trilogy Horicon, that being Voyager class Ape Face, and you can see that in terms of aesthetic, I think that these two really do look as if though they're from the same faction or the same group of Decepticons Decepticons. You can see here the similarities between the colour of purple, the black, as well as the shade of plastic. Whilst I do think that Snapdragon's shade of plastic is a lot nicer than that of Apeface, you can definitely see the similarities, and even the colour variation in the pink is very similar to that of Apeface. So these two definitely do look like a great pair, and to be honest with you, having these two as companions really does make them fit into the collection ever so slightly more. Before I picked up Snapdragon, I really and truly just had Apeface on his own, as I had no place to actually put him in the collection, as I don't have any of the other Horicons. But you can see with these two now firmly in the collection, I do think that they look slightly better, and at least they both have somewhere to go on the shelf. But just giving you a comparison, you can see that where Snapdragon does become rather long but is rather thin, Apeface is definitely a lot more compact and is a lot shorter in terms of his length. But I think that overall they look quite cool, and you can tell as to what type of beasts they're supposed to be, with Apeface being that of an ape and Snapdragon here being a dragon slash almost dinosaur looking like creature. But I still think that these two look really nice with one another. Now, transforming Snapdragon up into my favourite out of the three modes, that being his jet mode, is actually quite straightforward. So to begin with, you're going to want to remove the blasters, so we'll just detach those, and then you're going to want to remove the headmaster, which I will actually compare next to Apeface's headmaster once we get these into their jet modes. Just collapse these sections up, and you're going to want to fold these all the way up, and then repeat the same process. Here, you're going to want to unlock this cavity and collapse the head, and then that will collapse in there, and then you're just going to want to snap that back into place. Flip around to the front, lift this section up, and you're going to want to push this forwards. Now we'll take this section and we'll just disengage this all, straighten out this piece, and now what we can do is actually collapse this and solidify that all firmly and nicely into place. With that now done, we can take this section here, and you're going to want to bring this over, so move these arms out of the way. Just move that out of the way as well. Bring this up, and you can see a small tab there that will plug into the slot under here. So just take these and snap this all into place, and then we can fold the dragon arms up into this cavity here. So just fold all of that up into place. Now we can come to these sections, fold up the dragon feet, just like so. Lift this section up, lift this section up. And now you're going to want to rotate this, and you can see this huge slot there that this tab here will peg into. So just peg that into the corresponding tab and slot. Repeat the same process here for the second side. Rotate the fin sections out. Bring out Snapdragon's blasters. And of course, peg those into the underside. And repeat the same process here for this side, ensuring that everything is fully aligned up appropriately. And here we have Snapdragon transformed up into his really awesome looking jet mode. So now taking a look at Snapdragon in his jet mode, as stated as we got towards the end of the transformation from dragon mode to jet mode, I think that this is by far the best out of the three modes. I just think that this is such an awesome looking jet, and believe me, in jet mode it's leaps and bounds better than that of Apeface's jet mode. I think that Apeface's beast mode was slightly superior than that of Snapdragon's, but in jet mode I think that Snapdragon here wins hands down. You can see the overall elegance to the jet mode. It's actually a really clean looking jet, and dare I say it's probably one of the cleanest jets that we've gotten out of the War for Cybertron trilogy. Definitely a lot cleaner than that of the Voyager class Starscream, and I think that the sculpting and detailing amplifies the overall look of it as well. You can see all of the panel detailing, the lining detailing in it as well. I really do like the orange transparent plastic that they've used here for the cockpit, as well as here for the front section where the nose cone of the jet would be, and you can see some nice blue paint apps here for the middle section, as well as here on these fins. We also have got some nice detailings where the turbines would be, and the wings themselves have also got some nice sculpted panel lining, and we've also got what looks to be all moulded in guns on the side of the wings, which all look quite nice. And then you've got the purple blasters underneath the wings as well. Just a very substantial and rather large looking jet mode as well. And then as we turn around to the back, we can see that those dragon feet do transform into what appears to be thrusters. I just think that this is such a clean looking jet mode. Really does look as if though Hasbro and Takara Tomy spent a lot of time in making sure that the jet mode was by far one of the better jets to come out of this War for Cybertron trilogy. And he also does have some special features, so you can indeed open up the cockpit, and they haven't just left it plain. They've actually painted some interior detailing to the cockpit as well, which is not used or nor seen really and truly in any other mode. So this here is specifically for jet mode, and I think that that's just such a nice attention to detail. Before we take a look at actually inserting the headmasters into the jet mode, I just want to compare both Apeface's headmaster to Snapdragon's. You can see that I actually think that they are two of the more detailed looking headmasters that I have come across throughout my time of reviewing. You can see that they have got some really nice paint applications to the face sculpt, and once again, similarly to what we saw there for the beast modes, I think that the overall colour variation really looks as if they're a part of the same team. So these, even in their headmaster modes, really do look like a nice pair of figures. Now, actually getting him into the jet mode of Snapdragon, of course, you just want to fold the legs up and then just pop him in here, just slide him in there, and you can see the headmaster does indeed stay in there really nicely. And then we can conceal the cockpit. This side here does take an ever so slightly more force to actually tab into place, but just snap all that in. You can see the headmaster there, and you can see here and really appreciate the sculpted in and molded in detailing to the actual translucent plastic as well. Just overall a super nice looking jet mode. Another feature that the jet mode also has is that it does indeed have landing gear, so you can deploy this just by putting down this front landing gear section. Unfortunately, there's no landing gear on any of the other areas. It would have been nice if these sections here could have rotated out to complete the 3 landing gears, but nonetheless I think that it's quite nice that they just included the front one, and once again it's something that they could have completely missed out on. Comparing Snapdragon here to that of Apeface's alt form, you can really see that I think that Snapdragon's jet mode is leaps and bounds better than that of Apeface's. It looks so much more elegant and so much more realistic than that of Apeface. I just think that overall the proportions, the way all the parts are distributed, the molded in areas as well, really do make it look as if though that it really and truly does only transform into a jet. There is no evident beast mode pieces on this whatsoever. There are a few robot mode pieces such as the hands, and you can clearly see here the torso, but other than that I think that he does conceal the dragon mode really nicely. Whereas here with Apeface, it was very blocky, and to me, I just think that this is probably one of the worst figures to come out of the War for Cybertron trilogy so far, and Snapdragon here for jet mode, I think really and truly beats Apeface hands down. Now, turning to transformation from jet mode into robot mode, you're going to want to remove the blasters from the underside, so we'll just set those off to the side. Then you're going to want to disengage these sections and just raise those up to the top. Now what we can do is turn to this underside, and you're going to want to bring this section away and rise this all the way to the top. But you're also going to want to bring this up. So this whole black hinge joint here does indeed raise up. So just showcasing that on this side, you're going to want to take this and raise that up. And you can see that it does have this indentation that will slide into this slot. So it's all about aligning this up and shooting all of this into place symmetrically on both sides. So just snap all of that firmly into place. Now what we can do is take the arms, rotate the wrists around, fold up the fins, and here you can see where the hand and the forearm is. Take this side here, once again fold up the fin sections, rotate this section around and just hinge the elbow. Coming to these legs, you're going to want to take this and just elongate this, take these sections, separate those, and now with this you'll want to rotate these around, rotate this section around, take this, and this transparent tab here will plug into this slot. So just hinge this up and snap that into place. Repeat the same process. Hinge this up, snap that into place. Take these sections here, these are the heel spurs, and just fold those back on both sides. Turn around to the front, and that is the robot mode completely transformed. We're then of course going to want to take our headmaster and just compress the arms in as well as the legs, and then just snap this into place. And there you have Voyager class Earthrise Snapdragon fully transformed up into his robot mode. Now, taking a look at Snapdragon in his robot mode, definitely not an awful looking robot mode, but when comparing it to his jet mode, once again I do think that this is one of the more lackluster modes, and I just think that the jet mode in general is the better mode all round. But nonetheless, taking a look at a 360-degree rotation of Snapdragon, you can see that unfortunately he does have quite a lot of arm kibble. The fins from the jet mode do unfortunately just hang out on the back of the arms, and considering this one is actually molded in, there's no way to compress this in order to make it look more flush. I think that the backpack does compress fairly nicely though. Despite it being this rather obvious block on the back, it doesn't stick out too much nor protrude, and you can see here that the actual sections here to the front nose cone of the jet I think do fold up quite flushly once again up against the back of the legs. Taking a look at some of the details, the headmaster is really nice. I do like how it becomes this more circular headmaster than the rather more cuboid ones that we are more familiar with some of the Titans Return figures. And you can see some really nice paint applications here, such as the red visor as well as the purple mouthguard, and we do also have some nice molded in detailing. The torso is actually one of my favourite areas of the robot mode, with the Decepticon insignias on either side and this really nice purple paint application applied. And we also do have some nice molded in detailing also done here for the shoulders, and I actually really do like the way that their hands have been sculpted. So you can see fists clearly present here, but if you actually turn under to the underside, you can see where these thruster sections were for jet mode. But for me, these almost look as if though they are wrist blasters, much like how Black Widow has in the MCU. To me, they do look as if though they would electrocute the Autobot, or perhaps that's just me having too much of an imaginative imagination. But really, I do think that these could be used as some type of weapon and look like wrist gauntlets. You can see for the torso, we do have some nice details here. This whole figure is more of an amalgamation of just coloured plastic than paint. There honestly isn't that much paint actually applied to this figure. It is just moulded plastic that has been coloured that way. I still think that it looks quite nice. It would have been nice if perhaps they could have used a purple colour here for the feet. I do find that they do get slightly lost when compared to the shin area of the figure, especially when compared to these pieces. But nonetheless, overall, it's quite a nice looking robot mode for detail. Articulation, as the head is a headmaster, it is on a ball joint, so it could look left to right as well as up ever so slightly and down ever so slightly, and can also tilt side to side as well. We do get a full 360 rotation here for the arms. They can also hinge out to the sides, and when you hinge this out, it does expose some nice hydraulic details, which, similarly to the hollow gaps we saw here for the arms in Dragon mode, they didn't have to include this detail. They could have just left this either hollow, or they could have left it plain. I'm so glad that they did go the extra mile and sculpt this in. We do get a rotation here. Unfortunately, the most lackluster piece of articulation on this figure is the elbow bend. You can see it doesn't even bend 90 degrees, which is so unfortunate. If this could have just been extended ever so slightly, or if they could have allowed this to compress, this whole area in here is hollow. So I do think that perhaps they could have compressed this for jet mode and then extended it for robot mode. I do think that would have amplified the range of motion that we get here, but it's really not a deal breaker for me. No wrist articulation. Something which he does have over Apeface though is a 360 rotation there at the waist. The legs can kick forwards that far as well as back to that far. He can also do the splits to a great degree. Full 360 rotation at the thigh as well as a 90-degree bend there for the knee. And then finally, we do indeed get ankle rocker joints as well, which is really nice to see. So most of the more pivotal points of articulation are included with this figure. It's just I really would have wished for a greater range of motion there for the elbow, and I do think that they could have found a way to have given this figure wrist rotation. But nonetheless, for a Voyager class, I think that the articulation is more than suffice. For a quick War for Cybertron Horicon Voyager class comparison, here we have Snapdragon compared to that of Apeface. I've got to say that when looking at them in robot mode, I still think that Snapdragon is the better figure over Apeface. There was just something about this figure that I really didn't like, and I absolutely hated that this figure had no waist articulation integrated into him. I do feel as if though these figures are a step in the wrong direction for the Earthrise and Siege toy line. I do think that both of these are the weakest out of both of their respective lines in general, but that's not to say that Snapdragon is a bad figure. He definitely isn't the worst figure I've ever picked up, but out of some of the other War for Cybertron figures that I've picked up, he's really not the best. In terms of weight, Apeface is heavier than that of Snapdragon, but that's to be expected as Apeface has a really blocky beast mode and in general is just a lot bulkier in the upper region than the more slender appearance that Snapdragon does give off. But having them both side by side really does reserve them a space on the collection, and they just look really unified in terms of their overall colour scheme and their overall designs. So that was my review for the newly released Transformers Voyager class Snapdragon. Overall, I think that this figure is an average release. It's by far not my favourite out of the Earthrise line, and is probably the lowest ranked one out of the entire line so far. But as I've said throughout this review, that doesn't mean that this is a bad figure. It just didn't hit some of those expectations that some of the other figures in the line did, and that's probably due to this figure being more of an obscure character and one that I'm not so familiar with. I do think that the overall design of the robot mode is quite nice, and you saw that he does have a decent range range of articulation. The articulation in the elbows and the wrists are not a deal breaker for me, but they are something that I think for a 2020 release really and truly should have been utilised to their maximum and not just given a brush off. His jet mode is by far the best mode out of the three. Now this figure is a triple changer, so some modes are going to suffer than others, but seeing as his name is Snapdragon, you would really think that Hasbro would have put most of their time and attention into the Dragon mode or the Beast mode and made that the best mode. I think that the Dragon mode is unfortunately the worst mode out of the three, with the jet mode by far being the strongest appeal out of all three. So that was my overall review for Voyager class Snapdragon. If you have Siege Apeface and you are a fan of the Horicons, then you're really and truly going to want to add this figure to the collection. But if you're more into the classical characters such as Optimus Prime, Ironhide, Hoist, RC, Megatron, you're not probably going to want to add this one. So I really do hope that you enjoyed this review. If you did, please do let me know down in the comment section below. And if you do agree with my thoughts, also be sure to let me know down below, or be sure to also let me know whether or not you disagree with them. I thank you for watching this review, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.